What is your educational background? Where did you go to high school, college? What did you study, and how did that shape your view of the world?
All right, so I graduated from Farmington High School in the year 2000, and then I went to the University of Michigan College of Engineering, where I double majored in computer engineering and computer science engineering, and I graduated from there in 2005. I always knew I wanted to work with technology since I was a little kid. I was 5 when I got my first computer. It was the first kid on my block on the east side of Detroit to get a computer. And I also was exposed to the Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program to the engineering field. And so I always knew I wanted to be a problem solver. And so even in my role today, I think about complicated problems and how I can break them down into the simplest building blocks of solutions. And that really shapes my worldview. I think everything has a solution. I think every problem can be addressed. And my engineering training helps me try to do that in the best way I can.
Okay, next question. How did a software engineer get involved in politics? What was your political background before becoming lieutenant governor, and what was the road that led you to your current position?
Yeah, so my pathway to elected office is not normal. Actually, though, I was exposed to politics at a very young age. So my parents were very active in our community, both on the east side of Detroit and in Farmington when we moved to the suburbs. They were always the president and vice president of like our neighborhood association. And so I was a 4-year-old who was like at these meetings, like giving people agendas and water and stuff in our house. And my parents also were super just informed. The soundtrack to my life was CNN and C-SPAN and Motown. So I always knew what was happening with national politics because my dad watched it literally every day. And so I had a consciousness, or at least an awareness of the political space, especially at the national level at a very young age. And so when I went to college at Michigan, I was actually there during a tumultuous political time. Our school's admissions policy used affirmative action and was actually challenged all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And so I, on campus, led an organization for Black men called Heads. I helped to organize buses of students to go from Ann Arbor to Washington, D.C. for our day ahead of the Supreme Court. And that really showed me, that was my introduction to actual activism. And I kept that with me after I graduated. I went to work as a software developer at Microsoft, but on the side, I started a political blog in 2005. I was a young Black man writing about politics on the internet at a time when that was not very common. And I kind of found my voice there and found another community of people online who worked in politics as professionals. That ultimately led to me volunteering on Barack Obama's first presidential campaign in 2008. Ultimately running social media for the state of Washington for that campaign, helping to create the national text messaging program. And that really showed me that I could combine technology and politics to help people realize their political power and potential. So I quit my job at Microsoft and left, moved across the country after I got married to become a community organizer and worked in politics professionally for 5 years, helping people win campaigns for social, economic, and racial justice. After that, I came home to Detroit, where I actually got out of politics and worked for the government. As a problem solver, and I did that for 2.5 years before I ran for office for the first time in Detroit. I lost, and then about 7 months later, Gretchen Whitmer asked me to be her running mate, and that's how I got here.
All right, next question. What has it been like governing during a pandemic? What are some of the biggest challenges you faced in your role?
Yeah, I mean, nobody's ever lived or led during anything like what we're confronting right now, this pandemic. And so it's presented a lot of challenges. I think one of the big ones for me personally is that I really actually like being in the presence of people. I like going and greeting people where they are. I think it's a really important part of my service and doing that beyond campaign season. And so during this pandemic, where that particular activity has been dangerous, it has been important to find other ways to connect. In fact, I think all of the social distancing and limiting on gathering has reminded us how powerful and important those connections are. And so it's been hard. I've had to get used to being an extrovert in a very different way, but I have tried to find ways to connect with people. It's really important. And the other thing that has really come to mind for me is, this pandemic has shown that so many problems have been deepened by this virus, so they have been exposed by this virus to be bigger than we may have understood it previously. And so it's caused me to really dive into some of the issues that I worked on before, making sure more people have access to the internet and technology, making sure that people who may have criminal records still have access to the resources that they need to be able to sustain themselves and be successful. Making sure that businesses and restaurants and other small businesses have the support they need to survive this pandemic. Trying to find creative ways to do that has been actually a really big challenge and an important one to solve.
Next, what are some of your goals for Michigan once we've beaten COVID-19?
I mean, my goals for the state of Michigan haven't changed. You know, I think that I will be successful as a public servant, that our administration will be successful if we create the conditions for every single person, every student like you, and every person in the state of Michigan to really believe that they have a pathway to being their best self and to being successful here in Michigan. When I graduated from college, you know, I wanted to be a software developer. And I thought that I needed to move to a different part of the country to be a software developer and be successful. That's why I moved to Seattle in 2005. But I think if we make the right investments and the right choices and do the right things today, you won't feel like you need to make that choice, because whether you want to be a software engineer, an architect, or a dancer, or whatever it may be, I want it to be true. Not only to feel true, but to be true, that you can pursue that successfully here in our state and be your best self.
All right, last question. There are hundreds of student leaders from across the state at the conference today. What advice would you give to students who are considering a career in public service?
Don't waste your turn. Be engaged. You have perspective, you have energy, you have value, and don't let anybody tell you that you don't have what it takes to contribute. When I ran for office the first time, I was 34, and a lot of people told me that it was a bad decision and that I wasn't ready and that they tried to encourage me not to do it. But the truth is, you understand the experiences you bring to the table. And as long as you are shooting for something where you can truly add value, go for it. Don't let anyone tell you that it is not your turn to lead, because it is always the right time for people to step into their leadership.